the last chapter, we followed the footsteps of Bruno Sutkus, the lethal German sniper who left a trail of silence and death across the Eastern Front. But his story didn't end with the war. What followed was not peace, but a far more chilling descent into a Soviet system that saw him not as a man, but as a threat that needed erasing. This is the untold second part of his life, his brutal last sniper battles where exile replaced combat and the forests of Siberia became his new battlefield. It is a story of sacrifice, loyalty, and brutal survival far beyond the front lines. A man who once hunted Soviets in the snow would now march deep into their heartland, not as a soldier, but as a marked man. The storm broke over the Carpathian mountain passes on the 8th of September 1944. The Soviets came in like a tidal wave, and we were the dam. Generaloberst Heinrici took command of both the 1st Panzer Army and the 1st Hungarian Army, forming Armee Gruppe Heinrici to hold the northern flank. Our division, the 68th Infantry, was hurled into the heaviest fighting, just south of Sanok-Krosno. The ground was torn apart by the thunder of close-range tank destruction, grenadiers throwing themselves into death's path, taking out enemy armor with raw courage and willpower. On the 16th of September, we received a mention in the Wehrmacht report. A small honor, but one we bled for. The Soviet plan was clear. Punch through our flank in the Beskid Mountains, then turn and sweep down into Hungary, outflanking Heeresgruppe Süd. Their offensives were relentless. From the Baltic to the Black Sea, our front lines were soaked in blood and chaos. Then, in mid-October, we heard a whisper, no, a roar. The Soviets were in East Prussia. South of Gumbinnen, they had set foot on German soil. For us, that was unthinkable. It shattered something in all of us. The Russians brought more than just war, they brought terror. Their generals gave orders that spoke of annihilation, not combat. No mercy, one order read. Turn their land into a desert. Then came Nemmersdorf. When we recaptured it, we saw what had been done to our people. It was no longer war, it was butchery. Women crucified on barn doors, children shot in their cradles, even French prisoners murdered like dogs. These weren't isolated crimes, they were orders, they were policy. Ehrenberg's poison had worked. Every Soviet soldier saw us as beasts. Now we all knew what we were really fighting for, our homes, our families, our soil. After my leave, I rejoined the 2nd Battalion, Grenadier Regiment 196, near Kruzlova. The lines were shattered, our front broken, our companies encircled. We fell back and formed a new defense line 2 kilometers north of Kruzlova. On the 25th of October, I picked off 2 Russian officers at 150 meters. Later that day, during an attack on our battalion command post, Oberfeldwebel Kessler from 8th Company spotted a heavy Soviet machine gun tearing into our men. I shot the crew. 2 shots, 2 deaths. The officer behind them rushed in 2 replacements. I got both before they reached the weapon. He turned to run, but I dropped him too. During our counterattack, I saw another officer flee and shot him in the back as he ran. We retook the command post, and the Soviets withdrew. We found our wounded men, those we had been forced to leave behind, all executed. 2 shot in the neck, 1 riddled with bullets. 2 days later, on the 27th, the enemy launched another assault. North-northeast of Kruzlova, Russians stormed our trenches. Their officer had a pistol drawn, driving them forward like cattle. I hit him first, then dropped a soldier charging from a machine gun nest just 40 meters away. By then, new recruits had arrived, raw, cold, underfed. One was assigned as my fellow sniper. His first shot missed. His last mistake, a bullet from the enemy sniper took him in the head. Another was wounded shortly after and evacuated. I remained the battalion's only sniper. It rained. Then it snowed. We were soaked and freezing, our winter clothing nowhere to be found. We went days without food, living in trenches that stank of mud and death. The Soviets overran our lines several times, only for us to counterattack and drive them back at great cost. I knew then that my accuracy was no longer just my own salvation. The lives of the men around me depended on it. We snipers stood in the forwardmost positions, watching, waiting. We were the guardians and the hunted. On the 29th, still near Kruzlova, I spotted a Soviet machine gunner laying fire onto our 5th Company position. I took him out with one shot. While hiding behind a tree during an artillery barrage, I saw 3 Soviets break cover and fire into our lines. I shot them all from 40 meters. Feldwebel Durawa led me to a hot spot in the 6th Company sector. There, camouflaged Russians were pinning us down. I spotted 2 and killed them both. Then he pointed out a spot from which we'd been taking steady artillery fire. I scouted and found a sniper, an officer, and an observer. I shot the sniper first. The officer tried to flee. I dropped him. The observer followed, 3 more bodies in the mud. On the 30th, as the Soviets prepared for another attack, I moved ahead to a quick response post. We came under intense fire. I crawled forward, and at just 20 meters, I eliminated 2 Russian forward observers. Their rifles were still warm when I reached them. Everything was wet. Our boots squelched in water. We baled trenches by hand. One of ours, Horst, raised his head above the trench edge, just a little. A Soviet MG tore into him. I caught him as he fell. He bled from the back. I reached for a bandage. He waved me off. "Write to my mother," he whispered. "Tell her and my wife not to wait." Then, with glassy eyes and a shuddering breath, he died in my arms. On the morning of 31st October, I ventured into no man's land with Gefreiter Steffes. We dug into a hill overlooking Pisana and the nearby highway. A convoy passed, and I picked off 2 senior officers from 500 meters. The Soviets answered with a hailstorm of shells, but we were out of their angle. On the way back, a Soviet MG nest opened fire on us. I found the gunner's chest through the smoke and put him down. The next day, the Soviets had crept close again. Feldwebel Mir reported enemy activity, and I spent hours observing before spotting an MG nest. I shot the gunner through the head. At 6th Company, Unteroffizier Baldauf identified another position under constant fire. I waited, then shot the SMG-wielding Russian from 50 meters. 2 more MG gunners soon followed. On the 3rd of November, I crawled forward just 15 meters. A Russian mistook me for one of theirs, maybe because of my brown camouflage. I shot him from 20 meters. At the same moment, a sniper fired. His bullet glanced off my helmet, slicing open the skin above my left eye. I was dazed, blood trickling, but I saw his observer change positions. I shot him before he settled. Then, from 50 meters, 2 MG soldiers spotted me. I killed them both. We hadn't eaten properly in days. A runner arrived with news of supplies in a ruined village behind our lines. 2 men were sent to fetch them, loaded down with mess tins, water, sausage, bread, and ammunition. The clatter of their gear must have alerted the Russians. MG fire ripped through the air. They didn't return. I was sent to find them. Just 50 meters from our trench, both lay dead, chests torn open. Even in their final moments, they must have been thinking only of feeding us. The mess tins were laid out so carefully on a flat surface, whoever had done it had made sure not a drop of food would spill. That small detail told me everything. Even as death closed in from all sides, our hunger never left us. Tears welled in my eyes as I gathered the meals meant for comrades who would never return. I carried the food into our trench like a sacred offering. Nobody spoke. We just ate in silence. Soon after, we were ordered to move to Jastrzebiec. At first light on the 15th of November 1944, in the sector of 7th Company, I spotted a Russian sniper firing from a distant tree line. I adjusted my scope, timed my breath, and dropped him cleanly from 400 meters out. Not long after, I turned my scope toward a known Soviet command post. At 0730 hours, I saw a group of officers exit a bunker. I picked out the one in front and shot him square in the chest from 500 meters. He fell instantly. The others froze for a split second. That was all I needed. I shifted, exhaled, and took 3 more. Officers, one after the other, all from the same range. But I had drawn attention. One of their snipers had been operating in our area for some time and was blamed for many of our losses. Now he had me in his sights. I needed to act fast. I set up a decoy to provoke him, and it worked. He fired, revealing his position, and I ended his career with a single round to the chest at 500 meters. Their ghost was no more. Later, from the same position, I watched Russian troops planting fir trees along the roadside. They were trying to obstruct our view. We called in artillery, and after a few salvos flattened the foliage, the road was visible again. A horse-drawn carriage soon appeared, carrying multiple occupants. I aimed low and shot the horse, bringing the cart to a halt, right in my kill zone. One man was seated inside. I shot him. Another leapt out. I got him too. The coachman fired a shot, but I had already repositioned by 40 degrees. He missed. When he climbed back onto the carriage, I ended him at 500 meters. That night, a patrol returned with a prisoner. Under questioning, he revealed that a German sniper, me, had killed a general, a commissar, a regimental commander, and a battalion commander that morning. It was only years later, deep in Soviet captivity in Irkutsk, that I would learn the full story. I was interrogated by Colonel General Miroshnichenko, who confirmed what I had long suspected. The officers I had killed were part of a high-level inspectorate investigating a Soviet bombing error. Their own air force had mistakenly destroyed a secret Russian command post. My bullets had struck down those responsible for uncovering that blunder. They had laughed off warnings of a German sniper in the area. They weren't laughing when they walked into my sights. We'd actually known they were coming. Our night patrols had captured a prisoner who spilled the entire plan. There was only one path through the swamp, and they had to take it. Miroshnichenko told me I had become a legend among his ranks. Their loudspeakers called me the bloodiest fascist, vowing daily to kill me. Their snipers tried, ambushing every corner, but I kept surviving, kept shooting. Their morale was rotting from within. They had become afraid of the very earth they walked on. The wrong move, the wrong glance, and their lives were mine. I purged our sector of enemy snipers and saved many of our grenadiers. Later, that same day, I shot a Russian running across a farmyard, 700 meters. I also killed another soldier bailing water from a trench. That evening, as I moved with Lieutenant Jensen and a small group, a Russian sniper took 2 shots at us. It took time, but once I saw him shift position, I eliminated him from 450 meters. At dawn on the 16th of November, I saw a Russian platoon leaving their trench, advancing toward the farmyard. I found the officer leading them and killed him from 400 meters. Then I shot 2 soldiers, dragging a heavy machine gun. That marked my 100th confirmed kill. Oberleutnant Schöppenthal later wrote in the Raupe und Rad, our 4th Panzer Army's newsletter, that my 100th and 102nd kills happened under strange circumstances. When I reported my 99th kill, the sniper who had ambushed us, someone mistakenly recorded it as my 100th. The regiment even requested my file for the Iron Cross First Class. When the mistake was discovered, orders were given. I needed to shoot again. Regiment didn't care how. I just had to do it. By the next morning, they got their answer. Not 1, but 3 new confirmed kills. 102. Later that day, I shot 2 Russians as they left a ruin near 7th Company. One stood frozen in shock at his comrade's fall. I didn't give him a second chance. From 400 meters, I shot 3 more as they crawled from a bunker. Then I saw a figure hopping along a trench. He wore a cap, not a helmet, an officer. I waited for his next leap and killed him mid-air. From my position, I observed just how many troops the Soviets had in their line. It was staggering. We had barely a third of their numbers. At 600 meters, I spotted a Russian carrying mortar bombs toward the front. 1 shot stopped him cold. I wasn't alone. Jarosz, Roda, Haas, Lennox, and Hulseman all witnessed it. Following that, I was awarded the Iron Cross First Class as a simple private of Grenadier Regiment 196. 3 days later, in the sector near Przyborough, an enemy machine gun spotted me during a mission. I dropped instantly. Their first burst missed, but 1 round struck a stone and ricocheted into my forehead. Dazed, I held my fire. When the gunner tried to move position, I shot him at 500 meters. But another sniper saw the whole exchange and fired. His bullet tore a strip from my helmet cover. A near miss. I found him shifting to a new position and killed him instantly at 300 meters. Obergrenadier Bals saw it all. My wound was treated and bandaged. I returned to the line. Only the strong and lucky survive in the field. I saw comrades torn apart by artillery, shot down in the mud, or driven mad by fear. 1 young soldier broke and fled to the rear. He was caught, tried by a field court, and executed in front of us all. No one flinched. That was war. The Soviets had their own brutal laws. In 1942, when panic gripped their ranks, Stalin's orders were clear. Those who refused to fight were shot on sight. Commissars and enforcers walked behind their troops, shooting any who hesitated. Their casualties didn't matter. They needed movement, no matter the cost. In one failed defense, 11 of our comrades were left behind during a retreat. When we retook the position, we found them murdered. Bayonets in their backs, bullets to the skull. Soviet snipers were ruthless. They took any shot they could. I was tasked with finding and eliminating them. The Soviets called it a war crime. I called it duty. I was the shield for our grenadiers, risking my life in the forwardmost positions. They hunted me, and I hunted back. But I was faster, calmer, more precise. In the duel between snipers, only one survives, the better one. That takes endless practice and nerves of steel. I was raised for this. My childhood on the Sheshupa River, near the German-Lithuanian border, taught me to move unseen. I played games of smuggling, spotting border guards, slipping past unseen. Even stealing apples meant risking a beating from the farmer or worse, from my father. When he fell ill, I took over his duties. I was 16 and working the land on the Fichtenhohe estate. I drove teams of horses, hauled hundreds of sacks, and harvested until my bones ached. It was brutal work, but it hardened me. The pampered boys struggled at the front. I thrived. Nature was my teacher. I could sense the difference between a natural shape and a trap. When Soviet snipers used lures, I never fell for them. I understood terrain. I saw the world through a scope and through instinct. A true sniper needs precision, confidence, and total control. You can't flinch. You can't shake. Even a tremble passes through the sight. That's why I never smoked. Not even once. Not even in war. As the autumn rains set in over Yastrebiec, the trenches turned to waterlogged pits, often half frozen and barely tolerable. In the warmth of summer, we could undress, dry our uniforms, and pick out the lice. But now, in the slush and biting cold, we trembled beneath our gas-plane sheets, huddled together for warmth. Lighting a fire was unthinkable. The slightest glow would draw enemy fire. On the morning of the 22nd of November, I was positioned once again in the sector of the 7th Company. From 450 meters, I spotted 2 Russian soldiers bailing water from their trench. I fired and struck one. When another came to render aid, I shot him too. As the light increased, I identified a machine gun position that had been pushed forward under cover of darkness to just 250 meters from our lines. Its camouflage was expertly done, but I was able to target and eliminate the gunner with a single shot to the head. Soon after, I caught the sun glinting off an optic. A sense of being watched swept over me, and I knew I had been sighted. A shot rang out, missing my neck by mere inches, but the sniper revealed his position by firing, and I swiftly returned fire, eliminating him. In that same moment, a second sniper engaged me. His bullet glanced off my steel helmet, too high. He too had taken shelter behind a ruined wall. I adjusted my position and shot him through the chest at a distance of 200 meters. 2 enemy snipers down in one morning. Such a feat was rare. Obergrenadier Beres witnessed the exchange. The following day, I was once more with 7th Company. I observed 2 Russians on the run, likely messengers. One I shot cleanly from 400 meters. The second dove for cover, but misjudged his timing and attempted to crawl away. He became my next victim. Later, I targeted a sentry who, having just been relieved, wandered off carelessly. I shot him from 300 meters. Witnesses included Gefreiter Lichtenberger and Grenadier Büttner. The entries in my log from these dates had initially been confused, so let me now correct and clarify. On the morning of 21st November, I had assumed an improved vantage point and saw that the enemy had become significantly more cautious. Even so, I spotted a sentry returning to his bunker and shot him from 400 meters. An infantryman nearby returned fire with a submachine gun. After carefully observing his movements, I eliminated him too from the same distance. The next day, I spotted Soviet soldiers engaged in bunker construction and shot 2 of them at 400 meters. I also caught several men retreating from an advanced night trench to a rear daytime trench and shot 2 more at about 300 meters. Gefreiters Brodnak and Mardus served as my witnesses. On 23rd November, I received a personal letter from General der Panzertruppe Fritz Hubert Grazer, commander of 4th Panzer Army, acknowledging my 75th confirmed kill, though by then my tally had already reached 125. Only 3 days prior, on the 20th of November, General Lieutenant Maximilian Reichsfreiherr von Edelsheim of the 48th Panzer Corps had sent a letter of congratulations for my 111th kill, along with a parcel containing various valuable items. On 25th November, the official Wehrmacht report stated, Sniper Gefreiter Südkuss of Grenadier Regiment 196 has claimed 125 enemy victims within 5 months. Then came 28th November. The supply road near 7th Company's sector was busy with movement. Perhaps the Russians felt secure under the light mist. I was positioned 300 meters ahead of our front lines with an excellent view. I spotted a well-dressed Russian and shot him through the chest at 400 meters, followed by a second who halted, confused. Grenadier Elmer was my witness. Later that day, I was detected by a Russian sniper while observing the terrain. Wearing a layered bullet-resistant waistcoat beneath my camouflage smock, I risked taking a direct shot. His bullets struck my chest plate, and I feigned death. When he eventually emerged from hiding, I shot him from behind, again witnessed by Elmer. That same afternoon, our mortars and artillery pounded a property to our front. After the barrage, I observed several Russians rushing about. 2 appeared to be giving orders. I shot them both at 350 meters. Gefreiter Lichtenberger confirmed the kills. Our regimental commander at this time was Major Schulze. On 24th November, after months of unbroken front-line duty, I was granted a short convalescence and sent to a rest home at Buskow. There I met Erika Lentz, a Red Cross nurse. She tended to my bullet-riddled camouflage jacket without a word, even giving me her dessert and urging me to relax at the cinema. I could not help but think of her constantly, singing to myself the soldier's ballad, Erika. Though I knew I might not survive the coming weeks, I locked that thought of her away in my heart. She was kind to me, and I never forgot that kindness. On the 8th of December, I returned to the battalion. The next morning, I resumed duty with 5th Company at Jastrzębiec. I observed a Russian sentry being relieved and shot him at 300 meters. Another soldier pacing to keep warm stepped out from cover. I shot him through the chest. A third came to relieve him and met the same fate. I also targeted a soldier proceeding from his trench to the farmstead and struck him from 400 meters. One Russian emerged from a bunker to bail water. I shot him. Another came to inspect, and I shot him too. Machine gun fire soon followed as they had finally spotted my position. I slipped away and repositioned, now watching them clearly. I waited, then struck. 2 machine gunners fell to my fire, confirmed by witnesses from 5th Company. Later that day, I observed a change of sentries from a distance of 300 meters. One was struck in the chest and collapsed. 2 more came to his aid, and I shot them as well, at approximately 320 meters. Obergefreiter Erich Schmidt, Grenadier Richard Novak, and Gefreiters Bartel, Matschik, and Dubail were all witnesses. By this stage, the situation on the Vistula had grown dire. Our 68th Infantry Division could do little to dislodge the 25-square-kilometer Russian bridgehead. We were outnumbered 11-1 in infantry and 25-1 in tanks. A massive offensive loomed, and it was clear the enemy was massing their strength for a winter breakthrough. At 2300 hours on the 9th of December, the enemy unleashed a violent artillery barrage. We could resist a regimental attack, but not this. Regiment 196 received the withdrawal order. Major Hoffman gave me the task of delivering this message to our most forward units. The phones were down, and I knew the terrain. I set out with a signalman tasked with repairing the lines. Tragically, he was killed by a mortar shell shortly after we began. Alone, I crawled under fire to locate and alert our units in time. It was slow, harrowing work, but I succeeded. We carried our wounded with us. Our company commander, Oberfeldwebel Roller, was hit in the chest by shrapnel. I helped carry his stretcher to the aid station, but he died there an hour later. The following morning, 10th December, I was with 8th Company. I was shown a camouflaged Russian machine gun nest. After several hours of observation, I watched it open fire. I shot a Russian soldier exiting the nest at 350 meters. Gefreiter Trepka was my witness. On 11th December, now with 7th Company and accompanied by Unteroffizier Kuhn, I shot a Russian sentry at 450 meters. From the same position, I eliminated another soldier walking eastward from a nearby house, 500 meters. Later, I spotted an officer emerging near a bunker at the Jastrzębiec estate and shot him through the chest at 400 meters. Witnesses included Kuhn and Gefreiter Odenthal of 7th Company. This was the life of a sniper in winter on the Eastern Front. The ground froze beneath our boots and frost formed in the rifle's chamber. We had no choice but to remain motionless for hours, often under enemy observation, often outnumbered, yet always holding the line for as long as we were able. The weather turned cruel by mid-November. At Jastrzębiec, rain fell constantly and soon snow came, our trenches filled with icy water. In the summer, at least we could strip, dry our gear, and pluck out lice. Now we just trembled, wrapped in gas capes, pressing together for warmth. Lighting a fire was impossible. One flame, and Soviet mortars would have locked on in minutes. On the morning of November 22nd, I was assigned to 7th Company's sector. From my hide, I spotted 2 Russians bailing out their flooded trench, 450 meters away. I adjusted for the wind and dropped the first with a clean shot. As the second one rushed over to help, he too fell. Another twitch, another score. At dawn, I located an enemy machine gun position that had crept in closer, barely 250 meters from our line, well camouflaged but not invisible. One round to the head, the gunner collapsed behind the sandbags. That same morning, I saw it, a glint of glass, the shimmer of a sniper scope. A jolt of fear ran down my neck, a crack rang out. The round sliced so close it nearly grazed my throat, but it was his last shot. I quickly found his position and ended it. Another muzzle flashed. The second sniper's bullet rang off my steel helmet. My head rang, but I was alive. He hid behind a crumbled wall, but I still had his silhouette. A shot to the chest, clean and final. 2 enemy snipers dead within the same morning. Obergrenadier Beres witnessed both. The next day I was back with 7th Company. 2 Russians sprinted between trenches, likely dispatch runners. The first dropped at 400 meters. The second thought he'd waited long enough in cover, then tried to crawl away. I took him too. That same afternoon, I studied a sentry carefully. As he wandered off after being relieved, I squeezed the trigger, shot clean at 300 meters. Gefreiter Lichtenberger and Grenadier Büttner stood nearby and saw it. I had begun my day early on the 21st, setting up in a new hide with better visibility. The Soviets had become much more cautious. Still, I found a sentry moving back to his bunker. I dropped him from 400 meters. An SMG-wielding infantryman fired back. A few bursts, and then silence. After some careful tracking, I spotted him and ended it. Same range. Lichtenberger saw both. That day, I also spotted enemy bunker construction. From 400 meters, I killed 2 builders. Moments later, I saw Russians pulling back from their night trench to the safety of their daytime position. I caught 2 more in the open. Gefreiters Brodnak and Madus confirmed both. On the 23rd of November, I received a letter of recognition from General Grazer, commander of the 4th Panzer Army. My confirmed kills had crossed 125. Just a few days earlier, for my 111th confirmed success, I'd been sent a package from General von Edelsheim, commander of the 48th Panzer Corps. Letters, a small parcel of precious goods. My name was read out on the Wehrmacht report. They said, Gefreiter Südkus of Grenadier Regiment 196 has claimed 125 enemy kills within 5 months. November 28th, I was deep in the forward zone again. 300 meters ahead of our line under the cover of fog. I watched Russians using a supply road. When one appeared, tall and cleanly dressed, I hit him square in the chest. Another hesitated. I adjusted. Another chest shot. Grenadier Elmer confirmed them both. Later that day, a sniper found me. His bullet struck me in the chest, but I was wearing a layered bulletproof vest under my smock. I dropped like a stone and played dead. He took the bait. When he stepped out from behind his position, I raised the scope, held my breath, and ended him. Same witness, Grenadier Elmer. After that, our artillery battered Russian positions. In the chaos that followed, I saw 2 Russians trying to rally the others. I shot them both at 350 meters. Gefreiter Lichtenberger watched alongside me. By late November, Major Schulze, our regimental commander, approved my leave from the front. I was sent to Busko, a converted sanatorium. There I met Erika Lenz again, a Red Cross nurse with bright eyes and a kind heart. As I cleaned my rifle and boots, she quietly took my bullet-torn smock and mended it. Later, she gave me her dessert. Erika was something rare, beautiful, strong, kind. She became my Erika, not just the name of a flower in a soldier's song, but someone real, someone who stayed in my mind and never left. I returned to the front on December 8th, cold dawn, Jastrzębiec again. I was back with 5th Company. I spotted a sentry, clean shot at 300 meters. Then another walked back and forth to keep warm. I waited until he stepped into the open, shot him in the chest. His relief came shortly after, another clean kill. I tracked a soldier walking toward a farmstead, downed him from 400 meters. Then another trying to bail water, another who came to look. I shot them both, but this time they saw the pattern. Their machine gunners opened fire on my hide. I crawled out and slipped into another position unnoticed. From there, I had perfect visibility. I waited, tracked, and shot both gunners. That evening, I observed sentries change over again. Shot the first in the chest. 2 came to check on him. I dropped them both, all within 320 meters. Multiple men from the 5th Company witnessed it. It was clear now. Soviet troops were flooding into the Baranov bridgehead. 11-1 in infantry, 25-1 in tanks. A major offensive was coming. At 2300 hours on December 9th, their assault began. Artillery screamed down on us. Our regiment was ordered to withdraw. Telephone lines were cut. Major Hoffman handed me the orders for forward companies. I knew the terrain, so I led the way. A comrade from signals joined to fix the lines. A mortar round took him. I had to continue alone, dodging fire, weaving through craters and night shapes. I reached each forward company just in time. We carried our wounded with us. Our commander, Oberfeldwebel Roller, was hit bad, lung pierced by shrapnel. I helped carry him. He died an hour later. The following days bled into one another. December 10th, I shot a machine gunner who left his hide at 350 meters. December 11th, another sentry at 450. A soldier exited a house and walked into the open. 500 meters, perfect line. Then an officer stepped out of a bunker. I got him at 400. And then came the duel at Kharkov, December 17th. I spotted a Russian sniper and his observer. The observer foolishly raised binoculars. I shot him. Then both the sniper and I fired at once. My round landed in his skull. His missed. Gefreiter Dubail saw the whole thing. That same day, I was moving between the 7th Company's command post and the front. I saw a dispatch runner walking through the open, casual, careless. I shot him through the chest at 400 meters. That night, the Russians tried to block our line of sight at the Jastrzębiec farmstead. By stacking bushes against the wall, they failed. Through a small gap, I saw a soldier pacing to keep warm, another shot to the chest, an artillery spotter next, same result, then a dispatch runner, then 2 others in sequence. 4 men dropped in under an hour, all of them at 400 meters. Witnesses were many. In honor of my 150th confirmed kill, I was called to meet General Grazer in person. He spoke with me in depth about my work. He handed me a gold watch, a sniper's gift, and a basket of supplies. Erika was there too. She cooked me a meal and sat with me. 1 hour of calm. I can't describe what it meant. On Christmas Eve, she visited the front line. Despite orders, she demanded to come forward. I must be where my sniper Bruno is, she said. She found me in the runner's bunker. When she opened the door, I saw everything in her: home, peace, love, warmth. She kissed me. It was the greatest gift I've ever received. A few days later, December 27th, I returned to my scope. At the farmstead, I spotted Russians moving behind bushes. I shot an officer, then 2 men carrying planks. That evening, a runner emerged, 400 meters clean shot. On the 28th, I shot 3 more in the orchard and several runners throughout the day. One man spotted me and sprayed my trench with SMG fire. I waited. When he moved, shot him clean. On December 29th, I took out a careless mobile sentry at 300 meters. Then on the 30th, I saw an artillery observer peering through a window. 1 shot through the chest. He dropped. Midday, another Russian ran toward a bunker, shot him from 300 meters. Just after, I spotted the muzzle flash of a Soviet sniper. His round hit my trench wall. I ducked and then returned fire instantly, dropped him. The duel was over, but the Soviets kept searching. When the SMG man tried to move, I ended it. 350 meters. The score rose again. December 16th, near Kharkov. I'd been watching a Russian sentry pacing near the Karnickelberg from 250 meters out. He made the mistake of stopping for a moment too long. I took the shot. A second man rushed to help, and he fell too. The next day, I waited for the routine changeover and shot another sentry at the same range. Not long after, another figure emerged from the post and headed toward the woods. 1 clean round. Done. Then came the real test. I spotted a Soviet sniper and his observer hunkering down into cover. The observer was careless, standing too tall with binoculars raised. I took him first. Headshot 250 meters. Gefreiter Dubail confirmed it. The sniper and I fired at the same time. His shot missed, mine didn't. Straight to the head. Another ghost silenced. Later that same day, en route to the forward positions at Yastrebiek, I spotted a Russian dispatch runner, out in the open like he was on a stroll. I put him down with a single round to the chest from 400 meters, witnessed by Obergefreiter Haubensack. A few days later, 2 Russians stood in a shallow trench just ahead of a farmstead they occupied. They were chatting, oblivious. One stood a little too high. I fired, chest shot, confirmed by several of my comrades. That marked my 150th confirmed kill. To my surprise, a small package arrived from General der Panzertruppe Grazer, commander of 4th Panzer Army. Inside was a gold watch and a message of recognition, a rare token. I'll never forget it. On the night of December 17th, the Soviets tried to block our view into their farmstead by planting bushes along the broken wall. Poorly done. Through the gaps, I caught sight of a soldier stamping his feet to stay warm. I shot him, chest, 400 meters. Then an artillery spotter appeared, another shot, another kill. When a dispatch runner came into view, I waited for the right angle, chest, 400 meters. At 15:30 hours, behind the bush screen, movement caught my eye. In 30 minutes, I dropped 2 more. Poor cover. That made it 6 in one day. A few days later, General Grazer summoned me. He wanted to hear it all, my training, my missions, my process. I spoke plainly. Before I left, I was handed a hamper as thanks. It was then I saw Erika again, Nurse Erika Lentz. She made me a warm meal, and for a short moment, the war seemed far away. On Christmas Eve, Erika returned, bringing greetings from home. The officers tried to stop her from coming too close to the line. It was dangerous. Artillery never ceased, but she insisted. I must be where my sniper Bruno is, she said. They let her pass. I was in the bunker, eating. The door opened. There she stood, glowing in the half-light. We embraced. She kissed me. It was the greatest gift I've ever received. I think of her every Christmas Eve. On December 27th, near Yastrebiek, I noticed activity behind a wall of bushes at the enemy-held farmstead. Through a gap, I saw an officer, chest shot, 400 meters. 2 Russians carried planks in the garden. I dropped both. Same range. At dusk, a runner emerged. Another clean shot. Gefreiter von Freeling witnessed it. The next morning, 5th Company and I watched the Soviets working again. I dropped 3 more, one by one. Then, at 1000 hours, I spotted a soldier leaving the orchard to head for the command post. Chest shot, 350 meters. By midday, their runners were moving constantly. I shot 2. When one SMG gunner spotted my position, he tried suppressive fire. I lay still until one of our machine guns opened up nearby, drawing their attention. When the Soviet moved, I fired. Chest shot, 350 meters, another confirmed kill. Then the enemy tried something new, anti-tank rifles. I saw the muzzle flash and dropped flat. The shot hit the trench edge. Gefreiter Dubail, ever clever, crawled off and raised his cap above the trench. A Russian aimed for it. Mistake. I took him out from 350 meters. Later that day, returning to the command post, Unteroffizier Eichler pointed to a Russian sentry in the orchard, distant but careless. I hit him in the shoulder from 600 meters. Then a second shot put him down for good. New Year came as we stared across the Baranov bridgehead. Just 2 German corps facing overwhelming Soviet forces. On January 3rd, I saw a Russian exit a bunker and enter a house. When he came back out, I shot him in the doorway, 600 meters. That afternoon, one showed himself behind an MG. I fired, 600 meters. At dusk, a runner sprinted for the trenches. Chest shot, gone. January 4th, near Przybro, I caught another soldier walking between bunkers and the horse corral, 600 meters. He dropped. Later, I saw a soldier peeking from a bunker again and again. I waited. When he leaned too far out, 500 meters. At midday, I was relocated. At 15:30, I saw another Russian move through the trenches, 350 meters. Dead. His comrade came 15 minutes later, stood over the body, another chest shot, same range. January 5th, our artillery shelled their trenches. After a lull, they started to move again. I picked one off at 400 meters. Then I noticed 2 men directing mortar fire. One dropped to my shot, then a third came running along the trench. I hit him too. Hobensack and Martin witnessed it all. By January 6th, morning fog gave the Soviets confidence. I saw an officer among them, 300 meters, chest. An hour later, another officer stepped into a trench that had been dug too shallowly. Another easy shot. In the afternoon, 2 ran through the orchard. I dropped the first on the supply path. The second hesitated, then tried again. I shot him too. At dusk, 2 more were foolishly standing behind a tree, watching our lines. One drifted out too far, dead. The other was shot 30 minutes later. Around 6 p.m., another made a dash across open ground. I missed the first shot. He didn't notice. The second hit him square, 350 meters. January 7th, just before dawn, several Russians left their trenches for the dwellings. 2 fell before they got far. Then I noticed an artillery observer disguised in foliage. When he stood, I hit him from 400 meters. A group of 6 moved through a communication trench. I shot the first. As the others tried to drag him back, I killed a second. That revealed my position. A sniper fired. I saw the flash and ducked. His round struck the trench lip. I had one of our men lift a decoy to the right. The Soviet took the bait, then tried to change position. I fired 300 meters. That was my 200th confirmed kill. At 1100 hours, a group of 9 came from the orchard. They avoided stepping over the 2 bodies I had dropped earlier, climbing from the trench instead. It was a mistake. One by one, 6 in total, I dropped them all. At 15:30, a final Russian moved from the trenches toward the bunkers. 1 round, straight to the chest, 400 meters. Witnessed, confirmed. The war ended on May 8, 1945. Germany lay in ruins, our homeland crushed beneath the boots of the victors. I remained under medical care in Bergstedt until the 25th of May, when the Americans finally released me into the care of my parents. I knew where Erika lived, Red Cross nurse Erika Lentz, and made my way to Nasteten, near Wiesbaden. We stayed there together until July, but whatever dreams we once had of marriage vanished like the Reich. She told me plainly, if Germany had won, things would have been different, but as it stood, my mother needed me more than she did. There was a solemn maturity in her voice, and I understood. Erika mentioned an American colonel stationed nearby who had an offer. Out of curiosity, or perhaps a dying hope for purpose, I met with him. He offered me a long-term security contract guarding a gold and diamond mine in the Congo, but there was a condition. First, I would need to accompany his military unit to the Far East and serve as a freelance sniper. I looked him in the eye and told him I wasn't for sale. He tried to argue, said we had wanted to conquer the world. I told him what I had seen, how the Americans had helped the Soviets drown Europe in blood, how they had handed half of Europe to Stalin in exchange for profit. They hadn't liberated anything. They'd simply chosen one tyrant over another. Millions of lives lost, millions more enslaved, and now they had the audacity to hire me. He warned me, if I didn't take the offer, I'd better find work in Wiesbaden, because returning home meant certain arrest. I left for Stobnitz, near Leipzig, where my parents had fled. They could not return to our ancestral home in East Prussia. The Russians now controlled everything. My mother had taken in 3 orphaned daughters of a childhood friend, and I dreamed of smuggling them out of the Soviet zone. But on my second night back, that dream was shattered. I was arrested by the Russians. Some German communists had denounced me to Smersh, the Soviet counterintelligence service. They identified me as a former sniper. I knew the Soviets had a particular hatred for men like me. Their orders were clear. Enemy snipers were to be shot on the spot, not treated as prisoners of war. My mother, ever resourceful, spoke fluent Russian, learned during her years teaching in Lekachai. She pleaded with a Smersh lieutenant colonel for my release, offering him a bottle of French cognac gifted to me by General Grazer and my grandfather's gold signet ring. The bribe worked. The officer was impressed. Still, the price I paid for survival was bitter. That ring had borne the coat of arms of my grandfather, a count. My father had been born out of wedlock and rejected by that lineage. I had no proof of my ancestry, only that ring, and now it was gone. But the officer saw a solution. Back in 1940, when I was 16, I had been issued a foreigner's identity card, allowing me to reside in Schlossberg as a stateless person. Though later naturalized, I had kept the document. He had the police backdate it and issued me a forged certificate stating that I had worked throughout the war as a farmhand. I was officially made stateless once again. Before I left, he quietly advised my mother, "Your son should disappear, quickly." We fled to a Soviet-run emigration camp, then another, each time interrogated by the NKVD. My fake certificate and identity card kept me alive. But by August, the Soviets began sweeping up young men. I was rounded up in Altenburg and thrown into a cattle car, packed like livestock. A month later, we crossed the border into the USSR and arrived in Brest-Litovsk. There, the Soviets began drafting us. Anyone who had not served in the Red Army was conscripted. I was to serve in the very army that had destroyed my people. My mother wept and pleaded, but her cries were meaningless. They didn't care. We boarded another train bound for the east. As we pulled away from the station, another train approached from the opposite direction. I stood in the doorway next to an armed guard. I jumped, rolled under the other train. The guard shouted, but by the time he raised his weapon, I was gone. I fled back to Leipzig. My mother was ill, resting with the 3 Stepat children. Russian patrols were everywhere. I disguised myself in the nurse's coat, wrapped my head in bandages, and sat quietly with the children. A patrol entered the house, but ignored me. That night, a freight train to Vilnius passed through. We bribed the driver. He smuggled me across the frontier. In Lithuania, my aunt gave us shelter. Her husband, a local government official, forged me a Lithuanian birth certificate. My father's name was changed. I now had a new identity. We settled in Pashek, my mother's hometown. She was forced to beg for food in the streets to feed the orphaned girls. German refugees from East Prussia arrived daily, starving, lost, broken. Lithuanian families helped them however they could. I found work on the Povilaitis farm. The owner had been taken by the Russians for aiding the resistance. His wife ran the farm alone. In December, I made the decision to return to East Prussia. I crossed the Sheshupa River, still unfrozen, and found my home village, Fichtenhohe, in ruins. The house was half collapsed, the interiors smashed and gutted. I moved on to Herbstfelde, abandoned. Dogs roamed freely, barking at the wind. At Villanen, I saw smoke rise from a distant farmhouse. A horse cart had just departed. I waited until a woman emerged to draw water. She recognized me instantly. She had known my sister, Ida. She took me inside. Her husband lay maimed on a bed, both feet gone. Their 12-year-old daughter was dying. She had been abused by Soviet soldiers, her body mutilated. The parents had been forced to watch. The mother offered herself to save the girl, but the Russians only laughed. 8 of them took turns. The girl's body was broken, infected, bleeding. Her father had been beaten with rifle butts. I had seen death, but this was evil. The Pages family, living near the lake, shared similar stories. They told me of German prisoners executed on Vilunin Lake. The Soviets had blown up the ice to hide the evidence. I spent the night with them. They warned me not to linger. The Schlossberg church had been replaced by a Soviet monument. The German cemetery, erased, nothing remained. East Prussia was gone. I swam the Sheshupa again and returned to Pashek. On December 15th, 1945, the NKVD came once more. They were rounding up young men for military service. I was captured. At Grishka Budes, I was examined and deemed fit. Sent to a Soviet artillery unit in Gumbinen. The guards never relaxed. We were handed rotting uniforms, forced to swear the Red Army oath. I said nothing, not in my sleep, not even to myself. That night I made my move. I slipped out of the tent, crept past the guard. He spotted me, fired. The bullet hit me near the spine. I ran anyway, blood soaking my clothes. I had no bandages, no medicine. I crossed the ruins of the old front line, careful of mines. I collapsed in the cellar of a ruined house. In the corner, the corpse of a woman, shot through the head, her clothes torn, abused, then executed. I left at dusk. 3 days later, I reached the Sheshupa again. Ice drifted by. I stripped and crossed, freezing, weak, but alive. I collapsed near Senlakai. A farmer took me in. His name was Justinus Baucus. He pulled the bullet from my back with crude tools and sealed the wound with a red-hot iron. I stayed there for 3 weeks, recovering in silence. When I returned to my parents in Pashek, they told me I could no longer hide. I was a wanted man, a deserter. The Soviets would come again. I had only one path left, into the arms of the Lithuanian resistance. They took me in, and so I vanished, into the forests, into the silence. Lithuania had once known independence, hard won after the First World War. But in June 1940, The Soviets marched in, swallowing the nation under the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact like a wolf devours a lamb. A brief breath of freedom returned in 1941, when the Wehrmacht expelled the Reds and many Lithuanians took up arms alongside the Germans. They fought Soviet partisans, they fought Polish partisans. But by late 1944, the red tide returned, and it did not ebb again. From 1944 to 1952, nearly 100,000 Lithuanians vanished into the forests to resist. 20,000 never returned. Most were tortured. Many were deported. Lithuanian historians call it a war of independence. I call it hell. All my documents were gone, confiscated by the Soviets. One day, passing through Lekechai, I was stopped by NKVD agents. They said I looked suspicious. When I failed to produce an identity card, they branded me a bandit, a Lithuanian terrorist. They asked about my bunker. I was beaten bloody. At Grishka Buda's jail, my wrists were bound behind me with wire. The judge was a puppet of the NKVD. He wanted me to admit to being a German soldier. They demanded I betray the partisans, name hideouts, reveal names. The cell they threw me into was a box of standing death, 2 square feet per man, no room to sit, no room to lie down. You slept upright if you slept at all. I cursed fate. I cursed the day I survived the front. Perhaps it would have been better to have fallen with my comrades. But fate again offered a sliver of mercy. A cousin bribed Captain Shelebinas of the KGB, smoked ham, sausages, vodka. Just before trial, the captain intervened. The prosecutor wanted me executed for desertion, but the foreigner's identity card from Schlossberg still existed. Proof I was born in Germany, a stateless person. Under Soviet law, I could not be guilty of treason. I had no country to betray, and so, once again, I escaped death. I was granted the right to live in Shakai. My cousin Pius got me work on the Povolaites farm. The owner had been arrested for helping the resistance. His wife, Antoniana, Tony, was a teacher at the school in Lekechai. By 1946, I became the 4th farm manager in a single year. The previous 3 had all been killed by the partisans. That Christmas, my cousin Antone arrived. Her husband and brother were in the resistance. She asked for cereals, bread, whatever I could spare. But what they needed most was penicillin. Later, I learned Tony had made trips to Cowan, where she had ties to a hospital professor. He gave her penicillin and bandages. She passed them to me. I passed them to the forest. I remember setting aside 3 sacks of grain that autumn during the threshing. I slipped them past the state commission and got them to Antone. I never imagined those 3 sacks would come back to haunt me. On February 16th, 1947, a disaster struck the partisans. Bunkers in the Kurokaimas forest were betrayed. Surrounded, the freedom fighters chose suicide over Soviet torture. Their corpses were sexually mutilated by the Russians, then dumped in the town square as a warning. Among them was a young teacher named Grashina Matulaite. Her fiancé lay beside her, just as broken. Lithuania was ruled with terror, pillage, murder. At Yalta, Stalin had been gifted the Baltics by Roosevelt and Churchill. We cursed Stalin. The West toasted him. In 1946, they held a general election. Every candidate was a communist. The people boycotted it, so the NKVD simply filled out the ballots for them. Voting for the people, they called it. In 1947, I was forced to carry a banner in a parade. Stalin, our great teacher, it read. I held one side. A drunken miller named Jurgelis held the other. He stumbled just as we passed the party platform. Our banner collapsed into a puddle. We were arrested instantly, but the village couldn't run without a miller, so we were released 2 days later. Tony was ordered to prepare a school concert afterward. She arranged poems, songs of a people enslaved, longing for freedom. The poems never mentioned Stalin. When the party bosses read the program, they were furious. She was arrested. The school director intervened and spared her a political trial. But in March 1949, Tony and her entire family were deported to Siberia. She told me her story before she was taken. Her husband, Antanas Povilaitis, was a forester. When the Soviets returned in 1944, a communist rival, Matulonis, accused him of aiding the Germans. Antanas was sentenced to 10 years of forced labor in Siberia. The house was looted, the farm taken. Tony was ordered to live in the hen house. A collaborator named Glikas came to inform her that she now owned nothing, not even her spoon. The Soviets conscripted Lithuanians to the front after 3 days of training. It was a death sentence. NKVD officers stood behind them with pistols drawn. Anyone who refused to charge German lines was shot in the back. So many young men fled to the forests. The partisans grew, but so did the betrayals. In February 1947, the NKVD turned a partisan named Animashukas into an informer. He accused me of being a war criminal, said I had supplied 3 sacks of grain to the resistance, said I had a submachine gun, a Walther pistol. My cousin Anton and her husband were arrested and tortured, but never betrayed me. I was not so lucky. I was captured, bound, and handed over to a sadist, Lieutenant Kiselov. He tortured me brutally. When I refused to scream, he became enraged. They locked me in a cell. The next night, they brought in another prisoner, a German soldier who had escaped. But under Soviet law, any German found outside a POW camp was executed. In the morning, they shot him. Then they showed me his body. They asked me one final time, would I talk? I refused. They tried to blindfold me. I pushed it away and shouted, "Get it over with!" Kiselov placed a matchbox on my head and fired. He struck it clean. Then he said a bullet was too kind. A fascist dog like you should rot. My mother and Tony bribed Captain Shulabin of the KGB vodka, smoked meats, clothing. The next morning I was released for lack of evidence. My mother barely recognized me. My face was black and blue. My fingernails had been torn out. My back split open from beatings. I had become unrecognizable. Word came that the state was seeking someone to replace me as farm manager. But no one would take the job. Everyone knew my ties to Tony. In the spring of 1948, a Soviet puppet named Moscovichus recognized me. He knew who I was, a German sniper. I denied it. But I could see in Shulabenis's eyes that my time was running out. And so I prepared for another escape, or perhaps one last stand. It was still dark when Petrus, the forest warden, shook me awake. I had been sleeping in the barn, bundled in rags against the cold. It was 0500 hours, 25th March 1949. His voice was heavy. "They've come for Tony," he said. "She's to be banished to Siberia, with the children." I had made her a promise. A year ago, in a moment of truth between us, I told her I would go with her, wherever they sent her. She had laughed bitterly then, eyes wet. "No man ever does," she'd said. "When the soldiers come, they all run. They leave their wives and children behind to face Siberia alone." I had sworn to her I wouldn't be like the others. Now it was time to prove it. Tony was 44, 19 years my senior, a schoolteacher, a mother of 3, a woman who had lived through heartbreak, humiliation, and loss. And now they wanted to cast her into the endless ice, to let her rot in the taiga, far from home, and warmth and meaning. I couldn't let her go alone. I wouldn't. Still, I was afraid. Banishment meant a one-way journey into the unknown. I'd heard the stories. People froze to death, starved, died nameless in the permafrost. Few returned. Fewer still came back whole. My own father pleaded with me not to go, but I knew that NKVD would get me sooner or later. My ties to the resistance, my former role as a sniper, all of it would surface. And when it did, I'd meet the wall. Siberia was a gamble. Staying behind was a death sentence. I went to her dwelling. A grim-faced NKVD guard blocked my path. Eventually, their captain allowed me inside. She sat on the edge of the bed, crying softly. Her youngest child, born during the war, clung to her. "Tony," I said, "I'm coming with you." She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You know where they're sending me," she whispered. "To Siberia. I beg you, don't do this. You'll regret it." Even the captain tried to dissuade me. "You're a young man," he said. "Find a girl your own age. Start a life. Don't throw yourself away for this woman." I asked him if Soviet people chose to live in Siberia. He shrugged. "It's an undeveloped part of the motherland," he replied. "Many live there." "Then so will I told him. He reminded me I wasn't even on the banishment list. I wasn't her husband. But if I wanted to come, I had to make it official. I signed a petition Tony drafted. Voluntary exile. That's what they called it. An exception was granted. We could bring everything we owned. The others would be packed like animals. We would have a truck of our own. One final privilege before we disappeared. At Lekachai, the gathering point, lorries stood ready. Women cried. Some fell to their knees and begged the soldiers to shoot them. Anything but exile in the frozen unknown. They were shoved aboard like cattle. At the station, we boarded modified freight wagons, cattle trucks with barbed wire on the windows. Possessions went underneath the floor. The passengers went inside. The door was bolted shut from the outside. A bucket near the door served as a toilet. Everyone, man, woman, child, had to use it. There was a stove in the middle of the wagon, with a pile of coal beside it. The next morning, we stopped in Vilnius. Tony cried. Her eldest son, Ronas, was a student there. He had no idea what was happening. He wouldn't even know his mother and siblings were gone. The doors opened. More prisoners entered. Some had been held in Lithuanian prisons for links to the resistance. They carried nothing but a bundle. We sped toward Russia, past Moscow. The doors opened again somewhere far to the east. On the third day, we were allowed off the train to empty the bucket and collect water. Guards with rifles and fixed bayonets watched us closely. Later that day, we were given bread, soup, and a bit of coal. Children received milk. A female doctor made her way from wagon to wagon. A woman gave birth during the journey. At the next station, an ambulance took her to a maternity ward. Her 2 small children remained aboard, screaming for her as the train pulled away. We crossed the Urals, entered Asia. The guards relaxed slightly. Still winter. Snowdrifts reached the windows. At certain stops, we could disembark for sanitation. The facilities were nothing but planks. Men and women sat back to back under the eyes of sentries. Then came a moment of rebellion. At one station, a girl from our wagon dumped a full latrine bucket over the guard standing outside. He couldn't leave his post. Excrement ran down his greatcoat and rifle. The others laughed. He wiped his face with a cloth. At the next change of guard, the captain appeared. He asked who was responsible. No one spoke. No one betrayed her. The punishment was swift. Our wagon door was sealed for 3 days. No bread, no water, no soup. Later, the wagon was uncoupled and rerouted to the Arctic North. We rolled on, Chelyabinsk, Omsk, Krasnoyarsk, then Taichet, and finally Irkutsk, north of Mongolia. 4 weeks on the train. More time parked than moving. Old people sitting near us gave us lice. I itched constantly. It reminded me of the trenches in summer when we'd strip and crush the lice between our thumbnails. At Irkutsk, we unloaded. A doctor examined us. Lorries stood waiting. The landscape sparkled in the light. Lake Baikal shimmered like glass. I remembered being taught in school it was the deepest lake in the world. German prisoners had built the hydroelectric plant here. Thousands had died doing it. We couldn't travel by day anymore. The ground had thawed. The wheels sank into mud. The only way forward was at night, when the earth froze. We had 450 kilometers ahead, toward a district called Rayon Shiagalva. no paved roads, just frozen ruts and wilderness. Tony and I walked through the edge of the tiger forest. There was no sound but our footsteps and the whisper of pine needles. The moon cast silver across the snow. We passed abandoned villages, half-ruined settlements, places where, during collectivization, the inhabitants had been starved or murdered for resisting Soviet rule. The earth had not forgotten, the forest had not forgiven. It was clear, if we were to be left here, this would be our grave. Eventually, we arrived. A place called Federashine, a half-dead village with broken huts and hollow eyes. We were told we would live here now, work here, die here. The villagers were told we were fascists, profiteers, criminals from Lithuania, being sent to atone for our sins through honest labour. A Russian woman gave us a room. Her son, maybe 12, dug through frozen soil for potatoes. He found 2 rotted ones and placed them on the stove. The stove wasn't just for cooking, it kept them alive. They had no blankets, no coats, just rags. This was survival, barely. We unloaded what little we had. A bundle of laundry had been stolen by the driver. Locals came to stare at us, amazed that we had anything at all. Tony had 100 rubles. I had nothing. We were supposed to be paid 400 rubles for the previous month. We hadn't seen a kopeck. The landlady gave us hot water to bathe and deluce. That night, we tried to sleep, but the petrol lamp lit up the bedbugs. They crawled from every crack. We scratched and cursed and bled. The cattle wagons, in hindsight, had been cleaner. The next morning, we were summoned to the collective office. There, we had to surrender all our documents, every paper, every shred of identity. Then came the sentence. Tony was banished for life. Any attempt to escape would mean 8 years in a labor camp. We were now the property of the commandant. We were to obey every order, go nowhere without permission, do any task required. We signed the paper. The room was silent. Some people cried, others simply stared. The future had been erased. We were now part of the machine, and there was no way out.